Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Community Foundation's annual webinar on the responsive grant-making process. I'm Christina Ciociola, Senior Vice President for Grant Making and Strategy here at the Foundation. And today's webinar will be led by Sarah Fabish, who is our Vice President for Grant Making and Scholarships. And Sarah leads and oversees all of our grant-making processes, of which there are many. And she will be joined by Jackie Downey, who is our Director of Grant Making and Nonprofit Effectiveness, and Denise Canning, who is our Grants Manager. You will get to know their voices as we move through the presentation, although I'm sure many of you already know three of them, or at least one of them. The responsive grant-making process at the Foundation is our largest competitive grant-making process and occurs only once per year. It's probably our most public grant-making process. This year we have approximately $1.3 million to distribute in the first year, and as always we're expecting the demand to far outweigh the supply of funds. Typically we receive requests that total 5 times the amount that we have available to distribute, so I can't emphasize enough how competitive this process really is. With that in mind, if you're new to the Community Foundations, or if you've never received a grant before or never applied for a grant before, I suggest you check in and give Sarah or Jackie a phone call, because there may be another entry point into our grant-making system that's more appropriate for your organization at this time. There are other grant-making processes that might be available to you. I do want to take this opportunity to say a couple of words about priorities. This time of year we're always asked, what are the Foundation's grant-making priorities? And we want to be clear that this is an open and responsive process. That's what it's intended to be. We cast a wide net through this process and we take all types of requests. And it also is one of the opportunities throughout the year to give us an opportunity to learn about what's happening in the community, what some of the needs are, and where some of the greatest work is happening. And so we take that learning opportunity very serious as well. We do have some strategic priorities, but typically those are handled through other grant-making processes. So we wanted to be clear about that. Another thing I wanted to mention, which is something new we're doing this year and hopefully we'll repeat in a couple of years, is a grantee perception survey. I mentioned that this process is important to our learning. We like to think of ourselves as a learning organization, and later on this year in the spring we will be working with the Center for Effective Philanthropy to issue a grantee perception survey, which if you've been a current grantee or maybe even an applicant, a past grantee or maybe even applicant, you will receive this survey, and it's your opportunity to give us feedback on our grant-making process and other things about your relationship with the Foundation. So if you're chosen as part of that sample, please, I encourage you to look out for that in May and to please fill it out and give us that important feedback. We would greatly appreciate that. With that said, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You have a lot to cover today. I'm going to pass this off to Sarah Fabish, who's going to lead the webinar. Sarah?
So this is your official welcome to the Grant Seeking Information webinar. The goals of the webinar are to familiarize you with the responsive grant process and the other different grant opportunities that we have here at the Foundation, as well as forms of assistance that's available to you to write effective grants. And Jackie is the go-to person for that kind of information. And so this is the responsive grant-making process for both the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation. There's one door, and we'll be saying that throughout this webinar. A few housekeeping items. The webinar is scheduled to end at 4 p.m., and we will make every effort to end promptly. We ask that everyone in the room turn off their phone and anything else that beeps. For those participating from your desk, you are able to type in questions that we can view on our screen. For those of you in the room, you are able to ask questions by filling out an index card. We will make every attempt to answer the questions during and after the webinar. If we are unable to answer all the questions due to time limitations, we will post answers on our website. If you have any trouble viewing the webinar or with your audio, please call Matt Higby. He's at his desk at 203-777-7093. He's your lifeline if you're having trouble with the webinar. If you are having trouble hearing us, you can phone into the webinar instead of using the speakers on your computer. The webinar will be posted on both of the Foundation's websites by next week. And from these websites, you'll be able to click on to all the hyperlinks that you'll see throughout the presentation to access the documents and web pages. For those of you who are in the room, you have the outline of the webinar so that you can use that as you write notes from today. But all this information will be up on our website, so don't feel like you have to take copious notes. So the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, as Christina said, the Foundation for Greater New Haven is the largest and probably the oldest community foundation in our region. We were established in 1928, and it covers 20 towns. And so if you're interested in coming to the foundation, you need to be providing a service in one of our communities, a number of our communities, or in the Valley towns. The Valley Community Foundation, known affectionately as VCF, was established in 2004, and it fulfills the mission of the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven in the Valley's unique 5 towns. The two foundations work collaboratively together to address the needs and seize opportunities for our service areas. In fact, Denise and I and Jackie staff many of the Valley Community Foundation's grant-making processes and technical assistance opportunities. So we are the staff for both foundations. So if you're looking for guidance, we are here to help you provide that guidance and set you on the trail for getting into the right process. The Community Foundation for Greater New Haven does more than just give grants out. We work with donors to achieve their charitable goals and not-for-profits to create a stronger community. And so it's just as important to us as giving out grants to not-for-profits it is to make sure that organizations and not-for-profits are strong and have all the capacity they need in order to deliver their services. And that's why we have built a capacity building program under Jackie's leadership over these last few years, because it's not enough, I think, to give money, but also to make sure that we're meeting your other needs. We distribute grants to not-for-profits, community programs, and leadership activities from about 900 individual funds, and that's somewhat unique about what community foundations are about, is that we are a collective philanthropic interest from donors in our community, as opposed to one family, like family foundations are, where they have one source of income or trust that has created them. We are really a combination of many funds. And as I said, because we are a community foundation, we know a lot about what's going on in the community. And so besides being able to give out grants and help capacity and provide technical services, we have a lot of knowledge. We've been building our knowledge source on our website, and there's issue briefs and a lot of information. And so we can provide a lot of access to resources and knowledge, and also to potentially other collaborations of people who are doing work that are similar to you. We can help you make those kind of connections and introductions. We also convene the community foundation and the community around important issues. And so we actually are having a donor convening next week on refugees and that issue. And so, but we also convene the not-for-profits and other communities. We've done that around youth violence, around immigration, about prisoner reentry. We give out a lot of money, about $30 million last year in 2015. It's not all through our responsive grants processes, our competitive process. Many of our donors have created restricted funds that go directly to the organization as long as the organization continues to exist, and we manage and make sure that those endowments are doing well and are allowed to do a distribution on an annual basis. Our endowment is made up of these 900 named funds, and currently is valued at about $500 million, which is a real achievement for us. We've grown over the last year. And as I said, we provide technical assistance to not only not-for-profit staff, but to the board members as well. And that's all around trying to create a stronger impact in the community. As we talked about sources of information, and there's links, and if you go to the webinar, which will be on our website, those hyperlinks will take you to those places, but they're easy to find on our website as well. So our website in particular is a really good resource, and there, as I said, there's a lot of knowledge on there. And so going to the foundation website or the Valley Community Foundation website will give you access to that. I really encourage you to look for the Nonprofit Management Resource Center, which you can find as a drop-down in one of the drop-down menus that Jackie helps to manage, and it can tell you how to find a consultant. It lists all the technical assistance workshops. It gives you information about how to start a not-for-profit. There's a lot of templates for a lot of the kinds of infrastructures that you need in your organization. Also, GiveGreater.org is a real good resource. It is a database of over 300 not-for-profits. Many of you have your profiles there. If you don't, we encourage you to create a profile. Give is coming up again in the springtime, which Jackie is a great resource to tell you about. It also is a great resource for you to think about. So if you're starting a new project or program and you want to know who else might be doing that kind of work, you could search the Greater website and the data there with other organizations. You could search by issue area, or you could search by organization's name and come up with other possibilities of organizations you might want to check in with or talk to. And then there's Greater New Haven Community.org, which is a good source of information around that Lee Cruz helps to maintain here, and many of you may know Lee Cruz. It has its own area where EDs for not-for-profits can network with each other and share issues and talk to each other. It's a place to post events and job postings. It has blogs focused on particular issue areas like early childhood or research on not-for-profits and operations. The Data Haven website, as well as the Greater New Haven Community Index 2013, are also good sources. It can help substantiate the need for the service or the program that you're providing. The application, you'll note if you've already been in it, asks for data to support the need for your work or the service you're providing. The New Haven Community Index 2013 is currently being updated. We're going to have a new version of that, and hopefully we'll see progress on some of the issues that we've been collecting data around that will be coming out this spring, so look for that. But until then, it is a good resource that gives you an idea of what the data in our region is telling us about the needs in our communities. So it's a good segue into the next slide, where the first step when you're applying is doing your research. So we've shared with you a lot of resources that you can find on our website and on other people's websites in terms of getting data and information. Also, I want to say, as I said before, is that we have a lot of knowledge on our website, and so there's a whole knowledge section. There's issue briefs around different issues that you may be working in. The issue briefs actually take you to some of the profiles in our GiveGreater profile database that are good organizations that are doing good work and helping to resolve some of those issues. And so it's really important that you do your review, because our reviewers will be checking in to see if you know what they know. It's also important to talk to other people, other providers. As I said, you can find them on the GiveGreater site. It's important for you to talk to people who might be knowledgeable about in your issue area. They may also be good references for your application, and so it's really important for you to check in with those people you're listing as references for your application. Make sure that they have copies of your application and are knowledgeable about what you're asking the foundation for. It's important to understand our internal process, and that's why being here at this webinar is a really good thing for you to do. Also invite you, as Jackie will share with you, there are other opportunities to learn about in more detail about our application. It's called Nuts and Bolts. So so where do you go from here? Once you think about doing your research and really helping us to understand that you know your subject area and you've done a good job of understanding who else is doing that work, your unique niche is in providing that service, we like to build on the assets in the community. And so identifying possible collaborators and partners. Now, you don't have to have a collaboration or partner to come to the foundation, but many times it strengthens your proposal to have others who are important people in this business to work with you in order to accomplish what you're setting yourself out to accomplish. There may be unique reasons why you are working alone, and you can share that in your application, but many times the stronger applications are those that are done in partnership and collaboration with others. And so identify who those potential people are, community leaders, funders, government entities, other not-for-profits. There's a Foundation Center online at the New Haven Public Library, which can get you in touch with other potential funding opportunities. And then structure your program and request. Define the goals, outcomes, and measures. For those who are doing program or project requests, you'll have to do a logic model. Logic model is a good thing to do, and many times it's very instructive and helping to outline, what your ultimate outcomes are and what your goals are, and what the steps are you're going to take in order to achieve those, and what kind of activities you need to do, and what kind of resources you have. And so it's a really good outline, I think, to do before you actually write your application. And then prepare a preliminary budget is what you're going to do first year, and if you're doing a multi-year request the subsequent years, and making sure that you match everything in your budget with the activities you've planned. And then write an implementation plan. And that's the who, what, where, and how. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Who's going to do it? Develop a fundraising strategy, both private, public, your own resources that you're bringing to this. How are you going to sustain this in the future? Even though you don't have to have a full plan, but we want to have a hint of what you're going to be planning in the future to keep something going, if it's not a moment in time project. And then select potential funders. Where are you in the process of approaching other funders? Give us kind of a timeline of that, whether it's an idea or whether you've actually submitted some proposals. And then write your proposal. And again, we have some good resources in some of the technical assistance offerings that we have, and that can get you in the detail of how to write a good grant. So some really broad things you need to know about being a competitive grant and being eligible to apply to the foundation. All applicants must be tax-exempt organizations under the Section 501c3 or any applicable section of the Revenue Code, or have a fiscal sponsor who is a 501c3. And that's because the foundation can only give for charitable purposes. As I said, you must provide services in at least one of our 20 towns region, or so you could be outside of the region, but provide services to the population, because we're very place-based. Community Foundation is concerned about the region, geographical region that it's in, and will only fund for those things that affect our population. Applicants must adhere to a policy of non-discrimination. There's a sample of that on our website, and so you need to sign off that you do not discriminate as part of the application process. Applicants who are the recipients of the grant within the past 3 years must have submitted all required reports. If you are unsure of whether you owe us a report, you can email or call Kara Strong, and she can share with you whether you're up to date with your reports, and direct you to the appropriate report questions if you need to fill that out before you apply to the foundation. So your reports need to be up to date. Projects that we generally do not give any kind of consideration to are religious activities. That doesn't mean that we haven't funded churches or projects that happen in churches, but they need to be open to the broader community and not just their parish or their membership. We don't fund endowment campaigns. Probably limitations to travel would have to be really related to the project or program. And we don't fund previously incurred debts or deficits. And so we don't fund things that have already taken place or happened. And then requests for capital projects, they tend to be very large requests for building equipment, vehicles, and other depreciable items are limited and will be evaluated as the ability to enable an organization to more significantly serve its constituency. So in other words, we view building projects as a means to an end. Are you better able to serve your population as a result of having a bigger building or a better building or better technology? And we'd have to understand how you're going to be able to serve that population better as a result of that capital investment. So it's not that we won't fund those. We have, and you'll see good examples of that in our annual reports. And if you go to our website, you'll see grants where we've done some of that. We're probably not the largest investor in those things. But we have contributed those kinds of things because it's a better means to an end, because an organization's been able to serve a population that they otherwise wouldn't be able to as well because of that investment. So we wanted to make sure that you knew that there were other grant opportunities here at the Community Foundation, and also for you to understand that maybe whether this is the right process for you, the responsive grant making process, which is why most people are on the webinar and here at the table. We have a couple processes that have already happened that start in the fall, end of November, beginning of December, with an application that goes up on our website. So you may want to be looking at our website on a continuing basis to see what opportunities exist. We're currently right now having conversations with people who are coming to the Women and Girls Fund. That has a closing date of September 17th, and I was on a few calls today about that. We're asking organizations, February 17th, I'm sorry, did I say something else? Yeah. February 17th, which is next week. It's right around the corner, but not too late because it's not a hard application to fill out. But we have a very specific gender lens, and so it would be really important to look at the website page about that fund before applying. And what's required is that you have a phone call with either Kara, Strawn, or I before you apply, because we want to help you understand whether that is the right application for you to fill out. It has to be, the design of the program has to be very intentional with the women and girls that you plan to serve. The design manages the barriers or issues that the women and girls have in accessing that service. And then the year-round small grants, which is really available to anybody who has an operating budget of $2 million or less. It's smaller grants that are, maybe timely. We review them as they come in. They could be either for capacity building or they could be for a program or project support. They average about $2,000 or $3,000, sometimes maybe 5 or 6, depending upon what the need is. But very rarely do we get to the $7,500, which is the cap on that, because the competition is really significant for that. And then we're talking today about the responsive grant process, which has a deadline at the end of March. And we want to also share the Valley Community Foundation for those of you who are serving or want to serve the Valley town. They have some grant making that mirrors ours. They have a sponsorship, like the foundation has a sponsorship, particularly for those 5 towns. It's an ongoing process. You can get access to that application online as you can for the Foundation for Greater New Haven. The Valley Community Foundation has a civic engagement effort, which is really intended for organizations that have 1 to 1.5 staff people, mostly volunteer efforts that are working in their neighborhoods or their communities. And those are very small grants. And then they have the Valley Needs and Opportunities Grant, which mirrors our year-round process, which has an upper limit of $10,000, and is intended for new programs or emergency needs. And again, you can access that application on their website as you need it. And then they join us for the responsive grant making process. We manage that grant process. There's one door. You can access the application either from the Valley Community Foundation website or ours, but it's all applications come to Denise, and then we review them together.
So we're going to stop and just check the question log to see if there's any questions. And there are none, so we're going to continue with the presentation. So, going on, this is Jackie Downing. Good afternoon. I'm going to talk to you more specifically about the responsive grant process. As Sarah said, it's one door from the Valley or the New Haven Foundation. It's the same application, so you don't have to go to both places. It's one application. It is the largest grant-making process that we have,
approximately $1.3 million available this year, and 150 of that is Valley specific. We traditionally get about 125 applications, 125 to 175 applications that come in through this process. That's the combination of the jointly administered Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and Valley Community Foundation applications. There are 3 types of grant applications, and we will go through those today. There's a project and support grant, general operating support, and capacity building. We'll define those better later in the webinar. You can come in for 1 year, or we do encourage you to come in for multi-year funding through these applications so that you can plan better for your long-term sustainability as an organization. The judgments of the VCF board are central to the determination of grants that are awarded through the Valley, but those that do come back into New Haven and are approved also by the New Haven Community Foundation. So it is a joint process. The process occurs in 2 stages. As I said, we get about 125 to 175 applications for stage 1. That goes through a community review process. 40 to 60% of those applicants were approved to continue on to the 2nd stage as we move forward. There is a link on the notes for this. When you go to the website to look at this webinar, you will not only get the slides that you're seeing in the webinar, but you will get the notes, and all of the links are live within those notes. So we do have some opportunities for understanding better how to work both our process and grant writing in general. We have coming up on February 17th, Grant Writing 101. This is how we approach any grant application that you're looking for. It's how to find new grants, what the narrative should look like, what the financials should look like, how to package it, the secrets and tips of preparing any grant application, not specific to the Community Foundation. We have 2 workshops coming up for that on February 17th, one in the morning and one in the evening to accommodate those who have daytime jobs and are working as volunteers. So any Grant Writing 101. We also have the Nuts and Bolts workshop on February 23rd. That workshop goes specifically through the project, general operating support, and capacity building applications for this responsive process. We read through each question and then tell you what an effective answer has in it. We go through all of the elements that you need to know. The real sort of inside, sometimes there are nuances to questions, we talk about those. So we give you the applications so you can read through them then. You may have started your process and come in with specific questions. We're not going to talk about your application, but more in broad terms. And we will do that on February 23rd. We also have Grant Writing 201, which is a higher level. This talks more about the terminology of a grant. We often hear terms like inputs, outcomes, outcome measures, outputs, indicators. Some folks are confused by that terminology and not quite sure where it fits in. Some is used for planning, some is used for evaluation, some crossover. So we're going to talk about the terminology of grant writing, and then we're going to take a deeper dive into actually writing narrative. There'll be some samples. You'll work as groups to write some sample answers, and then we'll analyze answers to see what the strengths of those answers are and where there might be more information and where there are gaps, so you can see what goes into a good answer. And finally, in preparation for the grant process, is finding data for grants. Data Haven will host a workshop with us. They will go through not only the CT Data Haven site, but Connecticut Data, CT Data as well, and other websites, so you can understand how you can find data to back up the need for your organization and for the products and services that you produce. It's a very important part of the grant is being able to substantiate your need with data that can be cited from a credible source. Wikipedia is not a credible source. So we're going to show you some of the alternatives and how to really find those in that workshop. And the registration link is, again, on the webinar notes. Now we're going to talk about the actual responsive grant application review process and the timeline. So here we are on February 11th, and we're doing the webinar. The application is available on the website. You can get to that either through the Community Foundation website or the Valley Community Foundation site. Goes to one door. The applications are due on March 31st. When those applications come in, paper copies, read-only paper copies, are given to community reviewers. We'll bring together probably more than 50 community reviewers. Some are staff members from the foundations, and some are community volunteers. We look for a group that is really diverse across gender, age, ethnicity, and expertise area and geography, so that we can get a very diverse look at each of the applications. Each application is read by 3 reviewers. They score them independently. They come in for a training where we give them the criteria that we're looking for. We'll talk more about what the guiding principles are for our review of grants. We ask them to disclose any affiliations they've had with nonprofits so that we can avoid conflicts or anything that could appear as a conflict with a reviewer. And then we give them the score sheets and they go score those independently. That happens almost immediately after, and we get those back in April. We then bring those reviewers together for 2 deliberation sessions so that we take their scores, we average them, and lay them out on a grid. As Sarah mentioned, last year we typically get 5, I think Christina mentioned, we get 5 times the application requests than the funding that we have. So it's impractical to ask all of those organizations to go through the second stage. So what we do is draw an arbitrary line where we say about 120, 125% of what is of what we have to give is the request line where those applications will move forward. What's below that line will not. I can tell you over my 5 years here at the foundation, those scores have really improved. When I started 5 years ago, that line was at about a 72. That line last year was at 86. So grant writers are getting better. It is getting more competitive. We bring those scores to the reviewers, and we ask them to tell us anyone that's below the line who had a really good program, something innovative, something that's very important to the community, and perhaps not such a great grant writer. We want to be aware of those programs that may not have the capacity to do that so that we can see that those programs may be important to bring to the attention of our board. We also ask the reviewers to look at those scores that have the greatest delta. So if one score was a 20 and one score was an 80, we don't ask reviewers to change their scores, but we do ask them to tell us what they saw in the application or what they did not see in the application, what other information, what factual knowledge they brought to that application, so that we can pass that along and make our decision, our board can make their decision in a more informed way. So that process happens in April and May. In April, we then take the recommendations of the community reviewers forth to the board, and the board has the opportunity to take a look at the applications if they'd like to, and they look at the reviewer recommendations, and they make their decisions for approval to the second stage or denial at their board meeting in May. Denise, within about 15 minutes, sends out notification to everyone who has applied. For those who are denied, we set up an opportunity for folks to talk with either Denise, Sarah, or myself about what the gaps were in the application, what the strengths were, and how it might be more successful in the future. How an organization, because as Sarah always says, has to come into every webinar, no is not no forever. We would like to be able to make sure that that application is fundable in the future, so we'd like to have that conversation if it's a denial. If it's an approval, those applications then get passed on to staff and professional reviewers who do a deeper dive on the financials. They do an updating, and they do a site visit to the organization to get any updates that may have happened since the March application. Those then go forward to the analysis gets written by those reviewers in August, and they move to the Valley Board in September. They move to the New Haven Foundation Board in October for a final decision over 2 board meetings in October, and the final decision is made at the end of October by the New Haven Board.
So as mentioned before, all the applications are online on the website. So when you find the application you'd like to fill out and you click the link, you're going to come to a login screen. So for organizations that already have an account and have already done online applications, you know what your email is and your password. If you forget your password, then you can click on under the password text box, forgot password, and you'll be assigned a new one automatically. It'll be sent to your email, and then you can
go in again, log in with your email, the new password you were assigned, and the system will let you recreate a password that is just more familiar to you. If you are a brand new applicant, and that means you've never done an online application, then you can click New Applicant, which is under the email text box, and it's going to bring you to a screen where it's asking you to enter your email twice and enter a password twice. Now, the password is something you make up, so it's not assigned. There's nowhere to get it. You're just going to make up a password that's familiar to you and easy to remember. And once you've done that, you can enter the application. First page of the application is always an eligibility quiz that you answer. If you are eligible, then it brings you right to the application. So the one very important thing is once you create an account, you're going to get an automatic email from me that reminds you of your password. So I recommend to everyone keep that safe and sound because that's your only record of your password. So I don't have privy to your password. I only have privy to your email, and that's only if you've submitted an application. So these accounts are private. We don't go into your accounts. We don't see what you're working on. Those are all up to you. So if you have any problems logging in, working with the application, please call me. We want to make this as easy as possible. We don't want you to suffer with the technology, so just give me a call and I can help you through it. So we're going to stop for some questions. The first question is, an organization received a year-round small grant in early 2015. Can the same organization apply for a project responsive grant now? Yes, the answer is yes. There are two different processes, and one doesn't make a difference to the other. So you certainly can, if you have a year-round small grant, apply for a responsive grant.
Another question is, does it matter how many times an organization has been funded? No, it does not. We're always open for consideration of new applications.
Another question is, are logic models not a part of general operating requests? That's true. We're only asking project support applicants to fill out the logic models. That was a change a few years ago, so if you are applying for general operating or capacity building support, you do not need to do a logic model.
Certain projects less likely to be funded, such as, that is in the notes that will be available when you go into the webinar, but I'm just going back to that. We did talk about things like depreciable items, building and equipment are less likely to be funded, and things that are not likely to be funded are religious activities, endowment campaigns, travel, and previously incurred debt. But could you just repeat what you said? It's in the notes of the webinar, so when
I just wanted her to repeat what she had said, but I'm sorry, about operating, capacity building grants do not need logic model.
Right, so the question was, is a logic model needed for general operating support grants? So you'll see in every grant application there's an attachments page which lists the attachments. The project support application does require a logic model, but the general operating support application or the capacity building application does not.
The handout link is incorrect. We apologize for that mistake. We'll make sure that the correct handout gets linked to this webinar. Are the February 17th, and that must be in reference to the Grant Writing 101 classes. Those are being held at the Greek Olive. You must pre-register for those classes, and the link is on our website under Strengthening Nonprofits, the Nonprofit Management Resource Center workshops. Again, the link will also be available if you go to, when we put it up, the link to this year's webinar slides. Slides. Applicants notified in May.
Are applicants notified in May if they do not move forward? Yes. So right after the boards meet and decide who's going to be encouraged to the second stage or who's going to be denied, everyone will get an email within 24 hours of those decisions. So yes, you will be notified in May, the end of May.
And February 17th is different material on this. This webinar is specific to the responsive grant process for the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation. February 17th is how to approach any grant application you come to. if you have an existing 3-year grant, can you write for another year on that grant and at the same time submit a completely new grant? So that's two separate sections of that question. So if you have an existing 3-year grant, it was approved for 3 years, you cannot apply for another year. So the multi-year grant was approved for 3 years and that's it. If you have a current multi-year grant, you can apply for another grant. There have been years when we have had an extremely competitive docket and the board has not recommended applicants to the second stage if they have a current multi-year grant. But in the past few years that hasn't made a difference, so we don't know what's going to happen this year, but I just wanted to note both instances.
I would encourage you to have a conversation with me or Denise if you're thinking about that.
Previous grants were entered under a separate email address. How do you access those? So if you have, that means you have 2 different accounts. Some organizations have 5 accounts. So we always think it's best if an organization has one online account because the online account holds all your history of every application you've ever submitted. I have the ability to change emails on different accounts. So just give me a call and say, hey, I'm new. I'm now writing all the grants. I know that the account was under such and such name. I want all the accounts to come under my name. I can make that change. So just give me a call. That's a really good question because it is best practice for every organization to really just have one online account. So the history is there all together.
Someone's asking if we have multi-year grants for program, can we apply for a responsive grant? I would really encourage you to have a conversation with me. Why don't you call me or email me so we can have that conversation. It's always in a context, the answer.
Okay, so that's it for now. We're just going to resume the presentation.
So if you've already gone into the application, you'll see that the questions we're asking you to answer are framed within this context, these guiding principles we have for not-for-profits. We have this on our website. I would really encourage you to read the longer document. It's only 3 pages. It's not that long, but it's a little bit more expansive than what we're going to show you in this webinar, and it gives you a little bit more in terms of examples of what we mean by these 3 areas that we're going to be making judgments about. Our scoring rubric is also framed around these 3 areas, and so I encourage you, after you write your first draft of the application, to take a look at the scoring rubric and think about the way in which we're asking our reviewers to score your application and whether you think you provided enough substantially in your application so that they could answer and score you as we're asking them to score you on these scoring rubrics. And you have to understand that it's in the context of the whole, and so we ask our reviewers to read the whole application before they start scoring, and we usually ask them to read it more than once because there's not necessarily any one question that you can go to that you will find the answer that then allows you to score you on that. So it's really in the context of the whole that we're asking them to think about. There are some particular questions you need to pay attention because you'll see that they match a little bit more closely the areas that we're asking the reviewers to score on. So first and foremost, we're looking at leadership in not-for-profits, and how is your organization, your staff or board recognized as community resources in your field? How is your board involved in setting the vision for your organization? Are your program services in the cutting edge of the field? So, I mean, what is your organization known for? And is this in your mission? And so we are really concerned if organizations are going off mission or there's a mission shift. Now, there may be very good reasons for it, and your work with your population may have led you to a new area of work. We just need to understand what that is, what has caused you to go there. And so, what is it that you have in terms embodied in your staff that gives you that strength that allows you to work in that area and that knowledge? And boards are very important in that strength in terms of how is your board helping you set that vision, utilizing the information that you have about your population to make good decisions for your organization about what you're going to pursue. And then we'll go on to sound management. And it's more than just knowing how to manage your money and doing good budgets and managing those budgets, but how is your board involved? Not only in governing your organization and hearing reports from staff about how well you're doing, but also are they involved in making sure that you have all the resources, not just financial resources, but the resources in terms of connections and networking in the community that allows you to do work. And I've just had a meeting this morning where there was an organization where the board was kind of asleep at the wheel, and serious things were happening in that organization and they were not aware of it. And you don't want to be in that position with your board, that you want to make sure that they're knowledgeable about what's going on in the organization and that they're providing good governance and that they're reviewing financial reports on a frequent basis and asking good questions and holding the organization accountable for that. And then evaluation, as you heard from Christina, we value evaluation. We try to be reflective. After we end this webinar today, Jackie and I and Denise will be sitting down to see what we thought about what we delivered and whether we could have done it better, and we'll be looking for your input. So please shoot us an email if you think there are areas that we missed or could have done better. Because we've learned from that. And so in the same way, we're asking you as organizations to think about what are the evaluation measures that you're looking at. It doesn't need to be, a significant evaluation where you have a group that's not getting the service and a group that has the service and comparing the results of that. But you need to have some kind of feedback loop with the people who are taking advantage of your service. How are you listening to your population that you're serving? How are they giving you feedback about the design of the program, and how do you internalize that information and utilize it with your staff and board to be reflective about, well, should we be doing this differently, or are there some issues or barriers we're hearing from our population that are preventing them from fully utilizing the services, and how do we manage those things? And then this is how you talk about your program. These are the stories that you tell to funders and to others who are supporting you, your board, and your constituency. So being able to talk about examples of what success looks like for you is really important. And being able to tell your impact, excuse me. Jackie's coming to my rescue.
Okay, let's talk now about the specific types of applications. You may or may not know which application is appropriate for you, so hopefully this will help you to be able to make that decision so that you can, because the applications are significantly different. So you need to decide which application is appropriate. If you have a question, please feel free to call Denise, Sarah, myself, or Valerie Knight-DeGangi in the Valley to ask about the application that you have in mind, the project, program, or request that you have in mind, to see which application fits best. The project support application is for a new or existing program. It does not have to be a new program. It can be an ongoing program. So you use this for new or existing projects and programs. This application is available to any organization that is a 501c3 or has a fiscal sponsor and serves at least one town in our 20-town region. You do not have to have any prerequisites having been a successful applicant for this application. So for most organizations that are looking for larger support through the responsive process, this is the first step into the Community Foundation, and the only application available to those who have not yet gotten a competitive grant from us. So this is the project application for project or program support, something that you can carve out within your organization as a distinct project or program. We also offer general operating support grants. In order to qualify for a general operating support grant, you must, in addition to being a 501c3 and serving our towns, you must have been incorporated for at least 5 years. You must have received a responsive grant from either the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven or the Valley Community Foundation. And you must have a published GiveGrader profile. That GiveGrader profile must be published by the grant deadline, which is March 31st at 5 p.m. So if you don't have one now, it's okay. You can still apply, but you have to have the profile and the application completed by March 31st. General operating support is totally flexible dollars. We want to be sure that rather than for a specific purpose or project or piece of your business, that what you're doing is coming to us to further the support of your mission. And that's all we need to know in the application, how you are going to fulfill your mission by having these resources available to you over the time period that you've requested them. The capacity building support grants are defined as short-term financial assistance to build the infrastructure of the organization for long-term success. So let me give you an example. If you are hiring a development director, because a development director is going to bring in more resources and increase your capacity to do more programs, that is not capacity building. That is a long-term expense. You're bringing a salary person on who's going to get a salary from now, hopefully, until the organization expands your staff more. That is not capacity building. That would be general operating support. That might be program or project, but it is not capacity building. But if you're hiring a consultant to write a fund development plan for your organization, and that consultant will go away and your board will then implement that fund development plan, that's capacity building. So if you're hiring more program staff to do a bigger program and bring in more folks, that is not capacity building. But if you are renovating a room so that you can do a program in that room forever, that's capacity building. Again, for capacity building, you have to have been incorporated for at least 5 years. You have to have received one other responsive grant from the Community Foundation. And again, you must have a published GiveGrader profile. The reason the responsive grants for general operating support and capacity building support ask for the published profile is because the applications themselves are much more abbreviated than the project support application. The project support application will ask you pages and pages of information. Because you've taken the time to fill out a GiveGrader profile, we already have your information about mission and accomplishments and programs, your leadership, so you don't have as many things to fill out in the application. So the general operating support and capacity building applications are much shorter than the project application because you have the GiveGrader profile published. We're going to stop there for questions, and I know we have quite a few.
In what time period must the funds from a successful project support responsive grant be utilized? So the day of the vote, when the board votes the funding, which this year is October 24th or the 3rd, is when the funds begin. So it's a year from the day of the vote is when you have to spend the funds for the project support, or for general operating, or for capacity building.
Unless it's a multi-year request.
Unless it's a multi-year request. So if it's a multi-year request, you have, for instance, if you are awarded $90,000, let's say, for 3 years, 30 in the first year, 30 in the second, 30 in the third, then that first you have 1 year to spend the 30. Then you'll report on the progress of your outcomes because this is a conditional grant. If you're awarded the second year, then you have 1 year to spend the second year, and so on and so forth. If awarded, please tell us what the responsive grant award term is. So I just answered that. Did you say the project support responsive grant is the first grant a grant seeker must apply for if they have not applied or been awarded a grant from the foundation previously? Yes, that's exactly what Jackie was saying.
So I just want to encourage you, for those of you who've gotten applications from the foundation grant awards, you know that we try to work with you. So there have been occasions where an organization wasn't ready to start as soon as they got the notice of the grant award and wanted to start the first of the year, and that's possible. Those are kinds of conversations you should have with me. If for some reason there's been a delay because you had to hire somebody, we're understanding of that. So we're not rigid about you needing to spend the money by the end of October the following year. We are quite able to give you, short-term extensions for a few months, up to a year, if you need it, because there's been some kind of understandable delay. Always to be in conversation with us. Be in communication. We are very accessible, and so just ask the question. So one of the questions, what is the range of funding for project support? So if you looked at our website and saw some of the grants, you can see that there's a great range of support, and that's partly due to the sources of dollars that we have available. But on average, most of our annual grants are under $35,000, anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000, sometimes as low as $5,000 to $10,000. I'm talking about an annual grant, so there is a potential that you could get a $90,000 grant, 30-30-30, depending upon the availability of the funds.
Did you say that the scoring rubric will be made available to applicants?
So the scoring rubric is already on our website. So if you are on our Strengthening Nonprofits Grants to Apply For Responsive Grants page, you'll see the 3 categories. You'll see the general operating support category, project support, and capacity building. And underneath each category, you'll see the application link and the scoring rubric link. So we always recommend that people do look at the score sheet when they're filling out the application, because you'll see how the reviewers are and what criteria that they're using to score your application. So it's already on there. Yeah, it's already on the website.
And you'll get copies of your scores after the review process. So when you get the answer as to whether you're denied going forward or you are going forward, you'll get copies of your score sheets with the comments.
Another question, do all grant types need to be matched? No, we've done matching grants in terms of our grant will leverage other dollars, and that's great, but it's not a requirement. Sometimes we have made a condition to the grant award where organizations have to get a 1-to-1 match or a 2-to-1 match in order for our grant to be released to them. But again, that's a condition that some grants have had, and it's really on a grant-to-grant basis. So the answer in terms of a requirement is no, it does not need to be matched.
But it's important for you to understand that it's rare that the foundation would be the sole source of support for any operation or project. It's very rare. And so you need to have a backup plan. You'll see that there's a question in the application that what would happen if the foundation wasn't able to support you fully to the amount that you're requesting. And so we need to hear that you have a backup plan and that there's a potential for other funders or other sources of support, either through your operating budget or for other funders that you are approaching or donors that you're maybe developing a kind of a campaign to raise money for your project.
Another question is, how often are grant requests fully funded or most partially funded? We would say that most are partially funded. We do have some funds that have preferential language because our competitive or responsive grant pool is made up of unrestricted and preference funds. And there are times when there's, again, preferential narrow language to a fund, and if we have a meritorious grant request that matches the language of the fund, then sometimes those are funded in full because we have a fund to fund that. But most of the time, the requests are partially funded.
Okay. Going on to now some of the mechanics of the application. There are required attachments for all 3 types that are the same. Those required attachments include the signed statement of the grant submission approval from your board chair. So it needs to be on your letterhead, something that says your board is aware and approves of this happening. The signed statement from the board chair indicating understanding and compliance with the Foundation's anti-discrimination policy. There is an anti-discrimination policy available to you if you want to pick up the language from that, put it on your own letterhead and say we agree, or if you have your own anti-discrimination policy that is consistent with the community foundations, you can send us that as well. There must be a signed statement that that has been adopted by your board. Please do anticipate if you do not have one of those that has been adopted by your board, you're going to need to get that action done at a board meeting prior to March 31st. A budget and actual income and expenses for the most recently completed fiscal year, an annual operating budget and actual year-to-date for the current fiscal year, and a list of 3 references, not 3 reference letters, a list of 3 references and their contact information. Let me caution you to be sure that these references know that they are listed as references, and I would recommend that you give them, once you finish the application, an executive summary of what it is you're asking for and why. Give them the opportunity to read through the full application. It is very important to us that these references understand your organization and the specifics of this request. So those are the attachments that are required for all 3 applications. The project support application has many more attachments that are required because you don't have a GiveGrader profile. So those include your 501c3 determination letter, a list of your board of directors with their affiliations, the completed logic model form, and we will go over that, the completed budget form, and we'll go over that as well briefly. Project annual operating budget for the grant year, projected annual operating budget for the grant year, which will show the project that you were proposing embedded in the budget and what the expected expenses and expected income are for that project. A copy of your most recent audit statement if you complete an audit. If not, if you have a compilation or a review, we'll take those in lieu of that. And a copy of your most recent 990. So those have to be attached to the project support. At the end of the form that you fill out online, there is a page that requires you to add these attachments and describes them all in detail. So you don't have to remember it from this list. You'll be able to get that within the application. As you'll see, for general operating support and capacity building, the requirements are much less. For general operating support, all we need from you is a signed GiveGrader.org checklist, which is signed by the executive director or president. There are certain fields in the GiveGrader profile that are required for the grant application, which are not required just to have a profile. So you can publish a profile without some of these things being completed. For grant purposes, we need a few more fields completed than are the basic requirement for a GiveGrader profile. We want to be sure that you have checked those, so you have to print out the checklist, check them, have your executive director sign it, scan it, and load it back up to let us know that you've gone through each of those fields and are aware that those are the fields that we need to see. For capacity building, again, that checklist has to be completed, and we'd like to see a budget and timeline specifically for the capacity building effort. It doesn't have to be your general operating budget and how it fits into that, but what is the total cost of the capacity building project that you're proposing, and how does the community foundation's funding fit into that request. GiveGrader.org, as we've talked about, there are many benefits to GiveGrader.org, particularly through the responsive grant process. Applicants who are requesting general operating support or capacity building have to have a profile as part of their application with all of those required fields that are on the checklist completed. It is not much more extensive than the basic profile, but it is a little bit different. So I encourage you to look over the checklist. Any organizations awarded a project grant in 2016 will have 1 year as part of their terms of grant to complete a new profile. So even if you don't have it before you've submitted your project application, if you are successful, by the time 1 year comes up, you must have completed a profile. And you can start that profile at any time, and we encourage you to do that. There are lots of benefits for having that, one of which is boilerplate information. If you have filled this out, you can go there when you're doing other grant applications, pick up those things that you have thoughtfully prepared for the GiveGrader profile, and drop them into someone else's grant application. So they're right there and available. Right now we're in the middle of the Alexion 30 grant program. Alexion came to us and asked for worthwhile organizations that they would like to award $1,000 a day to that are New Haven serving organizations. We suggested to them that they look at the Give Greater profiles to make their decisions, and that's what they did. So the only organizations available for that program, eligible for that program, were those that were profiled on Give Greater. United Way, instead of uploading your financials to United Way when you apply there, reference our Give Greater site to get financials for applicants. So there's a lot of work that goes into creating the profile, but there's a lot of benefit also. We have the Great Give coming up May 3rd and 4th, the 36-hour giving challenge. Last year we put $1.3 million of donor dollars on the street in 36 hours. Great deal of excitement. Almost 40% new donors for organizations, identified as new donors to organizations. So it's a really exciting campaign to be a part of, and a Give Greater profile helps you do that. That was my Give Greater commercial. The Give Greater profile checklist, as I said, has some fields that are marked in a green bar that are required for publishing. There are other fields that you must complete, and then it has to be signed by the executive director. Going on to, once you have been awarded the grant, you will have an annual reporting on the progress made toward the grant, toward your outcomes. You are asked in the grant applications to identify 3 to 5 outcomes. Those are the 3 to 5 outcomes that then become the terms of your grant. So you write your own language pretty much for what it is you are expected to achieve. Those outcomes are then reported on an annual basis. Grant recipients must have the Give Greater profile and continue to update that. So if you have a change in your board of directors, change in your leadership, you have a new program added, we ask that you update that at least on an annual basis, if not more frequently, and upload new financial statements as they become available. The subsequent year funding for multi-year grants, as Denise mentioned, is conditional based on performance and progress toward the shared outcomes. As Sarah mentioned, we are not punitive in that we will say you're not going to get year 2 because you have not completed year 1, but I would encourage organizations to keep in touch with us. It is much better to get a phone call mid-year to say, we have a delay and this is why, as opposed to waiting till the end of the year to say, we didn't finish because we'd still like to move forward. We're happy to know what are the obstacles that you're facing. If there's a way that we can help you make connections to get past those, we're happy to do that. Reports are then reviewed and outcomes are shared with the Community Foundation's boards. We use those to help us create the issue briefs that go onto our website. We will go back to you for more information. If there's information that you have generated in the year that would be exciting for the community, we will use those reports in many ways. And available to you are these resources on an ongoing basis. For general questions, certainly Sarah Favish is always available for general questions. For general questions and technical support on the online application. So if you're having trouble navigating the online application, can't remember the password, something doesn't seem to be functioning, Denise Canning is our expert on that. For general questions and the budget form guide, that's me, Jackie Downing. For anything to do, any of the Valley grant processes or any of these applications, Valerie Knight-DeGangi in the Valley will be very helpful. The logic model and reporting questions go to Kara Strawn. Kara will also be available to review a logic model. If you're working on a project application and you have drafted your logic model, I would recommend you do that before you write the application. Use the logic model as an outline. Draft the logic model. You can send that to Kara and ask for her feedback, and she will be able to help review that with you, give you some constructive criticism or give you the praise for a completed great job, and send that back to you so that you can use that to frame out the narrative of your application. If you do send that to Kara, you must have it to her before March 24th in order for her to turn that around. And I would recommend that if you can do it before March 24th, you do that. That would only give 1 week for you and for her. So the earlier the better, but the absolute deadline is March 24th to get that information to Kara. And for Give Greater questions, if you're having trouble navigating that site or not understanding some of the nuances of the questions that are being asked, Stephanie Chung is our expert there, and you can reach her at that email and that phone number. So we have more questions? This is great.
Yeah.
An organization has a yearly budget of less than $50,000 a year and submits the EZ postcard Form 990. Is the requirement to support 990 waived in this case for project support request grant? Yes, you don't have to put up 990. You do get a letter back from the IRS that acknowledges that you filed the postcard. So we'd like to see a copy of that acknowledgement that you filed the postcard so that we know that you are compliant with the IRS regulations. But if you have under $50,000, you're not required to do 990. Is mine too?
Mm-hmm.
If requesting project support but already have a Give Greater profile, all the additional requirements still required. I'm afraid this year they are, and it's something that we're moving toward, but this year those requirements are still needed to be filled. The attachments still need to be filled.
We are working on that. Is there a list of pre-existing target funds that defines their narrow purposes online? No, there's not. That's really, the sources of dollars are in our grant making budget, and we make that determination in terms of whether that's a match or not, because it's such a variability in terms of available funds from those. So no. Christina did talk about our 2 strategic areas, and we may have a competitive process, and that would be announced in the springtime. If anybody's working with immigration population or individuals coming back from prison and trying to get integrated back in the community. So I would watch for that on our website in the springtime, and that would be more targeted for a narrower purpose. And then the second part of this question was, can a request be made specifically to a restricted purpose fund and not through the responsive grant making process? Now, those restricted funds have identified a particular organization that those funds go to on an annual basis, and as long as that organization continues to exist, the donor has directed us to literally cut a check to them on an annual basis from the income from that fund. And so they set that fund up here for the specific purpose of being able to contribute to that organization's operating budget for the most part. So no, that isn't available. We review those funds on an annual basis, and there's been times in which an organization no longer continues to exist, and we've brought those to our board, and sometimes those funds have been made, broadened to be a preferential fund to provide support for services similar to what that organization was. At times we've looked into the community to see if there was a specific organization that delivered that kind of service that was unique and was the only one doing it, and we've made that distribution choice to that organization, but that is a responsibility of our board as stewards of these funds to make those kind of decisions.
Another question is, do you encourage long-standing organizations to graduate out of project support into general operating support, or vice versa?
Well, that's again a good conversation to have with myself or Jackie. I've many times have encouraged an organization who may have been getting program support to think about general operating support because of maybe where they are in their evolution, and being able to have flexible sources of funding that they could use for their general purposes meets their needs. And so, yes, there's been conversations where I've encouraged organizations to think about that. But there's no right or wrong way to come to the foundation. You really need to make a determination about what is the higher priority need for you, whether it is for a project or program, or whether you need to have that flexible source of funds as in a general operating support. And again, you need to think about how competitive you are. We really want to support general operating support for those organizations that are providing a unique niche in the community, that are doing exemplary work for that organization, meeting a real need, and are striving, maybe not have totally achieved, but are living into those guiding principles by which we evaluate that. So, you know, that you have strong leadership, both in your board and staff and talent, that you have a way of determining your success and being able to tell your story and have evaluation measures that are internalized and change the way in which you deliver services on a regular basis, and that you and your board have a practice of reviewing that, and that you do have good processes and policies in place that make sure that the integrity of your organization is intact, and that your board is providing good governance in managing its resources and making sure your organization has access to resources. And so we evaluate organizations for general operating support within that those guiding principles, and that's a stiff review. And because we are so rigorous in our review about that and our other applications, we have other funders coming to us many times asking us why we support the organizations we do. I get those phone calls all the time. I'm actually going to be on a phone call with somebody who is thinking about funding an organization in our region, who's been funding things outside our region and wanting to. And so we try to encourage that, because we know that we can't support everybody that comes to us, and we like to be helping to leverage support to you and other organizations, which is a good reason to keep in touch with us and let us know how you're doing and what you have needs for.
Next question. Our main program is seasonal, ending in October. Given the award begins in October 2016, should we create a budget for 2017 to 19 or begin with 2016?
So seasonal, then, well, it sounds like if your program is seasonal and ends in October, that actually would pick up at the end of October until the following year. So yes, I would encourage you to do an application that's 2016 through 17.
Given the timeline for responsive grant decisions, what are the requirements for specific details on project support grants? For example, if we know we will be running a lecture film cultural series and have invited speakers to come, but have not confirmed dates, will that still make our proposal competitive? I would think that there is a theme or a mission behind presenting speakers and cultural series and lectures, so that there's some overarching reason that you're presenting this series. Because you don't have the specific dates would not impact the application, but you need to have a firm mission as to why you're going to do this, the types of speakers that you're going to be looking for to fulfill your purpose and meet your goals, even though the dates are not confirmed. But they would have to be within a certain time frame within the grant period, so that we know that we're going to be funding projects that are happening during the grant period. You can't say that you'd like to do a particular lecture and that lecture is not going to be available for 3 years or 2 years when you're asking for one-year funding. Anything else? That's it. Okay. We don't have any other questions written. We don't have any other questions in the room. We do have some time left, so we would invite you, if you'd like to leave the call or leave the room, please do that. We're going to take a look at the logic model and at the budget form guide, which are part of the project application. I would recommend that these are really good forms if you don't have a way of putting a budget together, or you don't have a way of framing an outline for your application, regardless of if it's general operating support or capacity building or project, that these are good resources for all grant seekers. So if we get to those,
before we do that, I just wanted to point out that the webinar is now posted under the handout section, because someone had mentioned that it was the incorrect one. So I just wanted to point that out.
So we're just going to navigate through to the logic model. The logic model has on it, on the back of the logic model, or as a second page, as you will see here, are the actual definitions of what the columns are. Always bear in mind that a logic model reads up and down. It does not read left to right. So in the first column, you'll be asked to put your goals for the project or the program or the application, if you want to put it in those terms. Again, 3 to 5 goals there. You don't want to put too many things that you can't accomplish. These are larger, overarching goals, so those are going to go there. When you get to the next column, which I believe is assumptions, you're not saying the assumptions for goal 1 are. You're saying the assumptions for your request are. So you're not going side by side. You're going up and down. So for the first column, if you can set your goals here in this, then what are the assumptions you're bringing in to that thinking? What do you believe is the condition of the community? What do you believe are the resources that you have available to you? What are the assumptions that you're making? What is the target population that you're serving? What are the specific demographics of that population? If they have unique characteristics like an income bracket, an ethnicity, a race, a gender identity, you might want to, in that area, put your target population as specifically as you possibly can, or a geography. Inputs are the things that you bring to the table. Do you have a cadre of volunteers? Do you have skilled staff? Do you have donated space? Do you have a great working space already? Do you have resources that are available to you, a partnership with another organization? What are the things, what are the assets that you bring to the table as part of this program or project? The activities. What are the things sequentially that you're going to do? This is sort of the outline of what you're going to do to accomplish what you're doing. What are the outputs? Those are the numbers of things that you're going to accomplish, but we're not asking you for numbers. We will not evaluate one application that's going to serve 500 over another application that's going to serve 50. It's the depth and the outcome that we're looking at. So you don't have to put the numbers there, but if you are talking about outputs, you're talking about meals served, homeless sheltered, kids in your program, adults served, rides given. Things like that are the outputs, the things that are quantifiable within your program. The number of hours of an after-school program, the number of visits to homebound elderly. Those things go in there. Outcomes, what is going to happen to those populations as a result of your activities? So what are the outcomes that you're expecting? What change in behavior? What change in the community? What social benefit do you expect? Those are the outcomes. Then the outcome measures are, how is it that you're going to know you accomplished those things? What will tell you that you've improved grades? What will tell you that you've prevented health conditions, chronic health, or improved chronic health conditions? What are the outcome measures that we'll use to evaluate your application? If you can put everything on the logic model in an abbreviated form, that will then help you write your application. For project support, this needs to be completed. It needs to be submitted with your application. You have the opportunity to submit it in advance and get feedback from Kara Strawn before, and I would say much before, March 24th. There are the definitions that I just talked through, so this really gives you a good sense of what each one of those is and how you can organize your thoughts toward creating your application. The other form that we'll look at is the budget form guide. What we ask for when you submit budgets is to be sure on this form, which is required for program project, it is there if you are submitting an application for capacity building. Be sure that you're submitting both expense and anticipated income. We understand you may not have all those sources confirmed, so we ask you, if you don't know what for sure, we ask you what the status is of those requests. So let's go to the first year budget form guide. So here you'll see the top, we do have the expenditures. So this is asking for total project budget, not what you're asking for them from the Community Foundation, but the total project budget. It says position A, B, C, D. Please change those. Tell us who those people are. If you don't have 4, that's fine. If you have 6, add lines. So executive director, program director, teaching assistants, visiting nurses. Who are the positions that are being used as part of this project? The total salaries, and the benefits, and taxes and fringes get added to that. As it breaks across, the total project is everything that goes into the project. All resources give you the total project number. If you have things that are being donated to your organization in support of this, the value of those goes into the in-kind column as well. So they're going to be included in the first column, but you're going to break them out in the second column to say the teaching assistants, let's say teaching assistants, you have $30,000 in teaching assistants, but 5 of them are volunteers. So let's say 1/3 of them are volunteers, and you're not actually paying those people. The value of their time is $10,000. So the total cost would be $30. The in-kind would be $10. So all you're needing to raise really is $20. So the value goes there, and then who is it coming from? The in-kind contribution. So who is it that's doing that? So you would say volunteer labor. You don't have to list their names. You can say volunteer labor. Under program, list the things that are specific to your program. If you have certain supplies, certain equipment, certain consumables that you use, feel free to change the names of the categories. If you do a significant amount of printing and you want to call that out, if you have to have cell phones on your staff in the field so that you have 24/7 contact with those are a program expense. Put a line in for cell phones. If it's the telephone for the agency, that's administrative. But if it's something related to the program, break out those expenses there. And again, if you have if I used an example this morning, if you are taking a program to the Schubert and the ticket value for the Schubert is $1,600, but they're giving you these tickets for half price, then $800 of that is in kind. So $1,600 in total, $800 in kind, Schubert as the contributor. When you get down to the bottom, administration is the next thing. Again, you may not have all of these things. You may not have mileage expenses. You may have something unique within your organization. Feel free to change the lines, add or subtract anything that you need. Do them out across if there's anything in kind. If you're using someone else's space and they're not charging you for that, put the value of that space in as total project. Put it as in kind. When it totals it, you don't have to do that. The total expenditures, now we can go down to income. Income. Community Foundation request. This has to be consistent with what is said on your application form. What are you requesting from the Community Foundation? And we are telling you, you'll have the answer by October 30th of this year. You may have other grantors that you are applying to. You can list their names. If you know who specifically they are, we'd appreciate to know who that is, how much you've asked of them, and whether it's confirmed, whether it's pending, and if you know when they're going to answer you, if you have an anticipated response date, we should know that as well. As you know, this is a long process. If our reviewers in June are looking at your application and you've told us that you have a Carolyn Foundation application pending and you will be notified in June, we're going to come back to you in June and ask whether you got that money so that we see what the total picture is like. We see how things are coming together for you. So put the other grantors, how much you're expecting, and what the status of that request is. Fundraising events. If you do something specific for this program, you can list it there. If you do a general gala and the money goes into your general operating support and it's not targeted for this program, don't list it. But if you do something specific for this program, or you do a specific event for this, make sure that gets listed as well as potential income, and let us know whether it's already happened or whether you're anticipating it. If you've done it in the past, you can say historical fundraising or past history says this much, so you're informed by your past history. Donors. If you have, we don't want their names. If you have a specific campaign around this particular project, so people are specifically contributing to this project, you can put donors on that line. And again, whether it's pending or you're just about to run the campaign. Earned income. You may be selling tickets. You may be charging fees to participants. If you anticipate income, put that there as well. Operating funds dedicated to the program. Your board may be so committed to this project that regardless of what other funds come in, there's a piece of your budget that is dedicated to this project. So the operating funds. So this benefit from the gala and all the other little fundraising things that happen within your organization contribute to your operating fund. Part of that is dedicated to this program. Please list that there. The total income should equal, scroll back up, the expenditures, total expenditures minus in kind. So this is total project minus what's not coming out of your pocket should equal the money coming into your pocket. So a card come forward. Oh, okay. So that's the budget form guide. And you can use this if you are doing any kind of project or program. You can use this for capacity building applications as well. Again, change the titles to whatever is appropriate, but you can use this form for any budget and projections. The second page asks for narrative. So you explain how you got to those figures. So I came out with $30,000 for program assistance. I would have to say it's 10 program assistants at $12 an hour for 13 hours a week times 40 weeks that the program will exist. That's the detail we want on here. If you put in your executive director may get $60,000. 10% of that executive director's time is spent on this program, so your executive director line would be $6,000. Explain to us that you're showing 10% of your executive director's time. If you've got those cell phones, you're going to talk about what the monthly charge is for the cell phone and why it relates to the project. So break down on this narrative, and again, change these titles so they match the titles on the first page. And there's a separate budget form for each year of your application. You can, in the case of administration, you can just say 3% cost of living. You think that's where that's going to go, and that's valid, but make sure you explain that on the narrative as to how you've changed your figures. Do you have any other questions here? Go back up to options. Show questions, yeah. Impact on the logic model really is the outcome and outcome measures. The outcomes are your impact. What impact is it you're trying to have? The single program has multiple moving parts. Is it recommended to apply for a single aspect within that program for project support, or is it okay to apply for the whole thing? And this is sort of the question that I answered before, if there's an overall arching mission or goal of the multiple parts, then you can certainly come in as one project. If they all contribute to your mission in different ways, then that's the way to frame it. I think you can come in for the whole package for each individual aspect of the program. Sarah's nodding, so Sarah agrees. You can come in for each individual aspect as long as they're all consistent with your mission, and you can show some continuity in the production of those separate events as a package. That's it. That's it. Nothing new over. They seem to drop in places.
Please tell me again where I can find the scoring rubric. So it's on our website, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, the Valley Community Foundation website, but I'll focus on the Greater Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. So you're going to go under Strengthening Nonprofits tab. You're going to hover over that, click Grants to Apply For, and then you're going to scroll down a bit and see a table, and on that table you're going to click Responsive Grants. It's going to bring you to the Responsive Grants page,
and the page is divided by the sections of general operating support project or capacity building. So if you go to one section, for instance, project, and you're going to see the application link, then right under there you should see the score sheet. If you can't find it, then give me a call, and I can navigate with you. This is Denise, by the way.
Okay. Well, this is the end of the webinar. Thank you for participating. As a reminder, the webinar is going to be posted on our website with the questions and answers. Next week, if you have any questions about today's webinar or you would like guidance on which application should